I will call the October 26, 2021 meeting of the Monona CDA to order. Brian, you've got
Yes, I have attendance.
all here for the attendance. Okay, you all just saw this meeting is being recorded announcement. Therefore, if there's anything that you don't want to be forever misunderstood, misinterpreted, taken out of context, or video edited, don't say it.
It's virtual.
I would entertain a motion for approval of the minutes of the August meeting.
So moved.
A motion from Jen, who was the second?
Doug.
Doug Wood,
Yep.
okay. Is that both Seth or just the opens?
Both is okay.
For
with
both,
me.
if you want, to make it more
Okay,
efficient.
all right, we'll leave it at both. Are there any corrections or additions anybody wishes to make? Okay, all in favor of approving the minutes, say aye, please. Or raise your
Aye.
hand so I can see you.
Aye.
Okay, the minutes are approved. Thank you all. I don't think there's anybody here for appearances. I'm
We
gonna
do. Devin
ask-
Renner is in the room with me in the conference room. I don't know if he has any appearance. Nope, he has no appearance.
No appearance, okay. All the rest of these guys are part of the project, so we'll take them when we get into discussion of old business. There is no public hearing, no new business, old business. Continued review and discussion, possible action if necessary, of the development proposal tax increment finance request for 4601 to 4711 Monona Drive. This is the neutral project, sometimes known as the Spring Haven Block Project. And I'm sure there are some other names out there as well. So we all got in our packet some new and improved information from the developers. So I would ask who's ever going to speak. I don't know if that's you, Nate. I know you talked before, is to tell us what's new and where we are on this.
Yeah. Brian, is this the up-to-date presentation that we shared with you earlier this afternoon?
This is the one you emailed this afternoon. Yes.
Okay, awesome.
None of
Chair,
none of the CDA has seen this, I don't believe.
no, I don't think they have. And
Okay.
is it okay if we present this to the CDA now?
Absolutely, but I just want to make sure everybody's not scrambling around trying to look for stuff, because this is the first time we're going to see it.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Nate.
yeah, and we're more than happy to share this out with everyone as soon as we're done with the presentation tonight.
Okay,
But yeah, just to give you some background on the name, we found a very cool historic website about Monona Grove area and a portion of East Madison. You're gonna see behind here the Blooming Grove, that overlay map. It used to be called Blooming Grove. So we're thinking, it's not for sure yet, but we're thinking about calling the apartments the Bloom. So in the public hearing, which I'm sure we'll have down the road, we'll get some public feedback on that, but that's the initial concept. Brian, if you want to flip to the next slide, we'll run through this first section pretty quickly and then open it up for discussion. Next slide just is about us as the development group. So it's a joint venture between Compass Properties and the Neutral Project. Neutral Project focuses on sustainable developments, and we haven't decided what certification we're going to be going for, but it will likely be either Passive House, Energy Star, or LEED. Those are kind of the three that we're deciding between, but it will be a sustainable development, and all of our development practices are very sustainable. We're also looking at potentially adding in some aspects of mass timber, but we're just trying to figure out how that would work with our massing, which you'll see later on here in the slides. Doug, I think we can get right into the CDA presentation and skip through this. If you want to go through, I think it's like slide, yeah, it's slide like 5. Yeah. All right. So this is the revised massing that we're looking at. We've gone through a couple more studies and we're thinking about going this way where it's kind of an L-shaped building and then just a little block at the end. And the reason why we're thinking about doing that is we're doing a development right now in downtown Madison called Baker's Place. And we have this very intimate muse type experience. And we're thinking we'd like the same type of experience in downtown Monona. And so between those two blocks there, and we'll further develop this massing into a schematic design for Plan Commission on the 22nd of November. But between the two blocks, our plan is to have a intimate retail corridor that's about 20 feet wide. That gives enough separation for our fire to have two separate buildings, but it still is very intimate, and hopefully it'll be a cafe restaurant on one side and then a cafe or boutique retail on the other. So that's a little bit about the development overall. Just to give you guys a little background, the land costs right now are estimating, we haven't finalized the purchase and sale agreements. We have LOIs with most of the parcels at 2.4 million. Our soft costs are 3.4. Our hard cost is a very, very rough estimate. This is not something we're going to be held to, but our rough estimate is 20 million. So that puts us at 26 for a total development cost, which that's how we got to most of our TIF calculations, which we'll see later on. And really the purpose of today is to understand how we go about those calculations, and then we can input the new numbers once we have them into the calculations. So we'll talk about that later on in this presentation. You can flip to the next slide, Brian. So before we get there, the reason we think that you guys should consider this development for TIF, and it looks like it would actually be opening a new TID, which I'll let the chair and Brian to speak more to, is for a couple of reasons, but primarily we looked at the TID 7 objectives, and we kind of overlaid those into whatever we're going to call this new TID. And so those you'll see here on the right. And we went through all those different items and we said, okay, how are those items applicable to our development? And that's what we're going to get into in these next couple of slides here, is how these items are applicable to our development and how we're going to employ those items. So if you go down to the next slide. Yeah, so the first one is increased property value, increased tax base. Well, those two are for sure. We're putting a very, very nice building on this parcel, and that is 100% going to increase the value of both the parcel and the surrounding neighborhood, and therefore it will increase the tax basis. So we'll talk a little bit more about that in the TID request. We can go to the next one, Brian. So the next one is pedestrian improvements, public safety, and decreased crime. So the bike share, I think, is going to be an awesome aspect of development. We're doing this in downtown Madison and downtown Milwaukee, but essentially what it is we have e-bikes that are on sites at the property that the tenants have access to, and they can go use those e-bikes, take them out to grab groceries, go to downtown Madison, go to, downtown Monona, and those are all with the residents' access. So that's very cool. We also will have ample storage for all the tenants to have their own bike. Next thing is public safety. We think that, we have this idea of eyes on the street, which is something we all studied in school, but really the impetus behind the idea is that the more eyes you have on a street corner or a street path, the less crime you have, because people don't want to commit crimes while there's eyes on the street. And so that's going to decrease crime and also increase public safety. So you can move to the next slide, Brian. So next 3 is increased density. That's for sure. We're presenting probably around 98 units with about 13 to 15,000 square feet of commercial. That's still yet to be solidified, and we'll present that to Plan Commission of what the exact number will be. But that will increase density and also reverse blight. Enhance community vitality. We think through our sustainability goals, it's definitely going to enhance the neighborhood and its vitality. And then we also intend to comply with the city and CDA plans. Next slide, please, Brian. Thank you. All right, so last 3 is enhanced stormwater management, affordable housing, and sustainable development. So enhanced stormwater management, we have a ton of great stormwater management ideas. A lot of those are around green roofs, native landscaping, and reducing stormwater loads. Along with, we actually were just in a design meeting today on this, and we're thinking that within our stormwater retention pond, we're gonna put really cool white birch trees, which are native to Wisconsin, and that will help with a lot of our stormwater management. The next one is affordability. Right now, we're considering going between 10 and 20% of the units at 80% of the AMI. That's a discussion point I'd like to have today with the committee to understand what the want is from the city and see if we can meet that. The last thing is the sustainable development. I talked a little bit about that earlier, but primarily that's around just our neutral standard and the sustainable certification that we'll be seeking on this development. You can flip to the next slide. Yeah, so last thing is you saw the check marks. They were initially in black, they went in green as we achieved them, and we plan to achieve them on this development. So that's kind of the objectives. Now we'll get into the TIF requests. So we went through the development budget earlier. I said that's subject to change, not substantially, but it might change slightly. We had a meeting, I think that was about 2 weeks ago, with the chair and Brian, and we talked a lot about, how do we approach TIF and what is the calculation we need to do on our end to actually come up with the TIF amount. And so we came and derived to 2 different TIF calculations. The first is a gap approach, and the second is a mill rate approach. So the gap approach, that is a little complicated to understand, but I'm going to try to walk it through here today. The gap approach, essentially, we took our, oh, perfect. This is great. Sweet. So essentially, we took our total sources, and you see those as 20.4 million. Then we took our total uses, and that was 26 million. Then what we did, and this is in the further TIF calculation, is we said, okay, we have to achieve 6% return on equity. And that's how we came up with the 4.4 million. And so then what we did is we took the gap between, the sources, which is 20 million, making sure we can achieve the 6% on equity return, which is 4.4. Senior debt's not going to change. They've already said that we're going to be at 15.6. And we also added in our grants. We took that, subtracted it from the uses, and we got this essentially gap. And that's how we came up with the TIF gap of 5.6 million. So that would be one way to go about approving the TIF, and one way about going out about the calculations. The second way would be the mill rate approach, which is much more, I think, accepted in other communities. And I think you guys have done this in the past. And that's essentially taking 27 years on the life of the TID and adding it all up with, and we can go through this calculation later, but adding it all up and taking your net payable, taking your present value on that, and you come up with your TIF amount. And that was 5.4 million. The reason why you see 2/3 in there is that was a recommendation by both Brian and the chair that in the past, the city has abided by 2/3 of that amount is given as TIF. So we added 2/3 of 8.1, and that was 5.4. Brian, in the appendix, I think we may have added in the slide all the calculations. If we didn't, we will send them out separately. And that was my presentation.
Hey, thank you. I had to, I got moved around on the screen, so I had to find myself so I could unmute myself. Thank you, Nate. Again, you members of the CDA have just seen that now for the first time. Does anybody have any questions at this point in time for any of the guys that are in the development team? Oh, Andrew Homburg, I saw your hand.
You mentioned this was being built in downtown Madison, and I think you said downtown Milwaukee.
No, I just was referencing 2 other developments we had worked on that used the e-bike share.
Oh, okay. I thought I misunderstood. I thought that this concept was under construction in Madison somewhere.
Oh, sorry. And then the Muse concept is under construction or will be under construction this winter in downtown Madison on East Washington. There's this like intimate Muse corridor that we're developing.
Where's that happening on East Wash?
It's on the 800 block, right across the street, right across Patterson Street from Indigo Hotel.
And then can you explain to me what mass timber is?
Yeah, so mass timber, I actually have a sample here. My computer was resting on it. Is this, do you see how there's like 3 different aspects of this wood? Those are cross laminated. So it's essentially you take plywood and it can be various sizes and you put the plywood together and into 15-foot lengths. And then you're cross laminating for the width and the length that you want. So most mass timber panels are anywhere between 8 to 12 feet wide. And then they'll be about 40 to 45 feet long. And essentially what you're doing is you're creating a very, very, very strong timber component that then is laid down for CLT, which is what I just showed you, cross-laminated timber for your flooring. And then your a lot of your vertical loads are all taken by glue lam, which is a little bit different style, but same type of idea.
Okay, thank you for explaining that.
Yeah. And just so you know, Andrew, we haven't decided if we're gonna have elements of mass timber. Because it's 4 stories, it could be type 5, which is just stick frame construction. But there might be some elements of mass timber.
Thanks.
Just for my edification, Nate, following up on Andrew's question about the mass timber, these would be structural as opposed to something like siding.
Yeah, so it's your structural loads are all taken by glue lam vertically, and then horizontal loads are taken by CLT. So instead of using like a stick frame or steel frame, you're using wood instead as timber.
Thank you. Anybody else have any questions for the development team? Okay. Not hearing any. I'm going to call for one more time, otherwise we're going to go into closed session.
Tom, can we ask a question for the committee?
You may.
What would be the preference or what has been the precedence in the past of awarding TIF? Is it the mill approach or is it the gap approach? And maybe that's a question for Gary.
I would say it's not necessarily either one of those. We tend to use the but-for test as well. And but-for in a global sense, is this project eligible for TIF at all? Meaning, but for having TIF, the project would not go forward. That's the first global sense. But the second sense in the but-for is how much TIF is required, since this is public money that we're dealing with, how much TIF is required in order to make this project viable. And there are different approaches to coming up with that amount.
Yeah, if I could add something, Tom,
Go ahead.
The CDA also looks at the value the project adds to the community and what other objectives are being met. And so it's not just a math calculation. I mean, that's my job. I do the math on it, but the CDA makes their decision on a variety of other factors that don't relate directly to the math. Would you agree with that, Tom?
I would.
Okay.
I assume the rest of the committee, rest of the commission members agree. Okay, go ahead, Nate. I think you were going to say something.
Yeah, I guess just a follow-up question to that would be, are there aspects of the development that we could add that would be appealing for the CDA that would allow for more TIF?
I'm not thinking of any off the top of my head, But that isn't to say that there might not be some. And as we have further discussions, if some of those come up, we will be sure and pass them along to you.
Okay. Yeah, and just so the committee knows, this is in our like feasibility schematic design phase, so it's very pliable right now. So if there's aspects of the development that the CDA would like to see, it's pretty easy to add in.
Yeah, fair enough. Jen Coor, I think you had your hand up or no?
Yeah, just a brief question. I'm just curious, kind of what's your target demographic for these buildings? I mean, it seems rather, maybe young skewed, maybe like the current that we have. But I'm just curious kind of what your target is.
Yeah, Brian, I don't know if you can pull back up the presentation, but we're actually going to be adding townhomes on the Springhaven side and then also on the back of the Gorham side. And so we're hoping actually those townhomes would be occupied by like more baby boomers. Like, yeah, if you go up
Or small,
right there.
small
Yeah,
families, right?
perfect.
1 or 2 kids.
There we go. Yeah. So right there on the Gorham side,
You mean
You'll-
Gordon?
Gordon, sorry, not Gorham. The Gordon side,
Gorham's downtown Madison.
wrong street.
Yeah.
So on the Gordon side, we're going to be having townhomes, and then all along Springhaven, that whole building will be townhomes. And so we're really hoping that it's baby boomers and families.
Okay. In all of the, and I appreciate what you said about that you're just conceptualizing at this point in time. You're really early on in the process. Of course, all of the numbers that we have seen so far have a different number of units and different rental rates than I suspect you're going to be dealing with here when you're talking about townhomes.
Yeah, the townhomes, we haven't determined what the rental rates would be, nor have we determined the exact number of units. We're targeting, I would like at least 10 for sure, maybe more, but it just kind of depends on how many actually fit within the space on Springhaven and Gordon.
Yeah, okay. Jen Coor, did that get your question answered?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, Brian Gatto.
Yeah, just.
I don't know why that is.
Um,
If you could describe for the CDA the difference in the materials that you submitted this summer, where you had a TIF ask of $3.45 million, and now with the new materials, there's an increase in the TIF ask. I just want the planning or the CDA to be clear as to what's driving that increase in the TIF request between when you were first here this summer and when you're here now.
Yeah, no, good question. So we had
I'm getting an echo in here.
So we had a meeting with the chair, Gary, and I think Brian, you were a part of that as well. But so that the CDA knows, we went through these calculations and within pretty detailed, and I can share them with the committee here. But essentially, the impetus behind why there's an increase in the TIF amount is derived from the calculations. So we had to go through a revised pro forma, and we looked at the gap, and we said, okay, if we need to hit a 6% return for our investors, which we do to get the project to be able to work for our investors to actually invest, then we need the gap amount or the mill rate amount. The mill rate amount's a little more, the gap amount's a little less. So that was kind of the impetus of why we need more TIF for this project, which is derived from the pro forma and what our investors need for a return. And if they can't get 6%, I don't know if we're going to be able to do it.
Okay. Other questions? Okay. Hearing none, this is your last chance. Okay, I will entertain a motion to convene in closed session pursuant to Wisconsin State Statute 19.85, paren 1, paren small e, deliberating or negotiating the purchasing of public properties, the investing of public funds, or conducting other specified public business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session. And the subject matter of this closed session is 4601 to 4711 Winona Drive project, the one that we've been talking about. I will entertain a motion to go to closed session.
So moved.
The motion from Hamburg, is there a second?
Second.
Second might have been Kelly, I'm not positive.
Yep.
This is roll call. Brian, will you call the roll?
Yes. Alder Cool,
Aye.
Alder Wood,
Aye.
Mr. Lombardo.
Aye.
Mr. Hamburg,
All right.
Mr. Kelly. Aye. And Mr. Chair Stover.
Who was the last one?
You, Chair Stover.
Oh, sorry. Aye. So we are in closed session. So
Give it a shot when, thank you.
see you, the rest of you.
Yeah, so what I'm doing is those,
sign
presentations,
sign
I'm
off.
gonna move you to.
I'm getting a lot of feedback here.
Somebody has their mic on. I'm gonna move the presentation team to the waiting room, and I'll move you back into this meeting when we're back out of closed session. So we'll let you know. Just give me 1 second.
Okay. Okay, we're back to back in open session. Next item on the agenda is item 7D. And at this point, the CDA has asked staff to engage in some more discussion and clarifications of the developers because the project is changed again right before this meeting. So we're still unsure of where we need to go. So other than that, no action to be taken tonight. Item 8 is an update on existing and proposed developments. 8A is a staff report. Brian or Doug, who's going here?
Yeah, I'll ask Doug to just kind of give the rundown of the projects that he's seeing in the queue at Plan Commission.
Thanks. So the main one that I'll introduce is the North Point Development Corporation. So this is the White Horse property, sort of behind the gas station on East Broadway. The proposal has come through. It's had 2 pre-hearing conferences with the Plan Commission. The proposal as it stands is for a total of 75 units, 63 of those in an apartment building, in a 4-story apartment building, and then 12 of those units split across 2 townhomes. And these would all be rentals. That's moving forward for its general development plan, the GDP, consideration at the November 8th Plan Commission meeting, with potential City Council consideration before the end of the year. That would have some component of workforce housing as well as market rate. It would be predominantly workforce housing with a variety of income restrictions based upon the area median income. There'll be supportive services with this as well that would be included, but there would also be some market rate units. There's no commercial component, it would just be residential. And the reason for sort of the shorter timeline on this one is the applicant is pursuing WIDA tax credits as well. So in order to meet the deadline, that's sort of why this has moved so quickly, really through Plan Commission. I would say generally the Plan Commission was supportive of this, and I've received the materials. Plans haven't changed too much from the last consideration. It will still need to go through the PIP, the precise implementation plan, if this does proceed, to get sort of final designs and things like that. But the GDP is sort of more conceptual, more high level, and so it would be a sort of first step, but there would still be a couple more steps to follow. As far as other development projects, there's a couple other residential projects that are sort of in the hopper. Some things that have not formally submitted yet, but just more rental units. Again, with some discussion in a couple places of a possibility of a few workforce units. I don't have any update at this point on the Monona Garden project. Things have gone a little bit quieter on that, and I'm following up with the developer just to see where things are with that. And the other sort of economic development update that I just wanted to share with you is we've seen a few of the Main Street bounce back grant applications come through, and that's part of the COVID relief bill, and that is for occupying previously vacant spaces, and it's a $10,000 grant that is being given to businesses either that move into a new space or expand into those spaces. And so far, as part of that application, the city writes a letter sort of confirming, the facts are correct and sort of going as part of that application. So far, we've seen that for a space on Monona Drive as well as River Place. And we actually had a third one contact us that's kind of in process at the moment. So nice to see a couple applications coming through and making use of some of that funding as well.
Just to add one.
Thank you, Doug. Brian, go ahead.
Sorry, just to add one thing in the North Point application. We do not know at this moment whether or not there'll be a TIF component or a TIF request as part of that project. They had indicated initial interest in that, but they were waiting to see what was happening with some of their other financing. So I've asked them, to consider it both ways with the TIF request and without. So we'll see if in fact they submit one. If they do, obviously we'll bring it forward to CDA for review.
Okay. Questions from CDA members of staff? This is actually item 7B. So question about anything you've just heard or anything else? Okay, seeing nothing. Upcoming meetings. At this point, the meeting would be November, 2 days before Thanksgiving. Since Thanksgiving's the fourth Thursday and our meeting's the fourth Tuesday, they are almost always 2 days before. If we can avoid having a meeting, I suspect we'd all like it given the holiday, but if we have to, we'll have to. And I don't know, Brian, if you've got any inkling of.
Yeah, nothing in the hopper.
Is.
Yeah, nothing in the hopper at the moment that would trigger meeting. The only thing I could see changing is if we got an update from the Monona Garden project, but that remains to be seen, and I'll be in contact with the chair about that. And if that particular Tuesday doesn't work, we can look at rescheduling that meeting to a later or earlier date, depending on schedules.
Okay. Anybody have anything else before I call for a motion to adjourn? Okay. Who wants to move to adjourn?
I moved.
Jen Cour. Second, I think was,
Me.
I don't know, Dave Lombardo.
Lombardo.
All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Okay, we are adjourned. Thank you all very much for your attention and good work tonight. Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.